Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome on into your FreightWaves Now Community Spotlight. I'm Kaylee Nix here with Mary O'Connell. It's time to get chilly. We've got Running on Ice for you on this Friday morning, talking to the fine folks from Polar King. Mary, thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys. There is literally no better way to spend your Friday other than talking about all things cold chain.
There we go. And let's dive right into it. You've got the folks from Polar King up on the show today, and they are innovating the space with a different type of construction material for some of their cold chain resources, fiberglass versus metal. Let's talk about some of the differences.
Yeah, so the really cool thing that comes with some of these innovations you don't think of innovations in cold storage or innovations in like refrigerated walk-in units. Like that doesn't come to the front of mind when you think of innovations in cold chain, but it is one of the things that Polar King is working on. And so traditionally, we've all, well, maybe not all of us, but most of us that have ever worked in a restaurant have walked into the walk-in. It's a famous place to go and cry in the middle of the shift. And so what you see most of the time is those metal walls. And so that's great. They're a great insulator. They keep everything cold. It's wonderful. But when it comes to cleaning, if you've ever had to clean out a walk-in, you know how much of a pain it is. And so that's where the fiberglass part comes in, is that it's a little bit easier for care and maintenance. And there's not as many like cracks and crevices that it comes with when it comes to cleaning it out. So that way there's less chance for contaminants or other things. Specifically, if you maybe are putting this refrigerator unit at a multi-use facility, like if you have a hospital that maybe there's some construction going on and you need to put pharmaceuticals in there, and then the next month you need to put food in there, you really need to make sure that it can be fully cleaned out and sanitized, sterilized, etc. So that way you're not cross-contaminating with anything and making people sick, because that is not a great time for anyone.
And absolutely the opposite of what you want, both out of a restaurant storage facility as well as a hospital facility. I'm going to touch a little bit on thermodynamics on this one, so stay with me here. And if we get too in the weeds, tell me and we'll get right out of it. But when it comes to differences of the actual materials that this is being made with, you mentioned the cleanliness aspect, but what about the insulation aspect? We know that metal is typically a really good conductor of thermal energy, right? When something metal gets cold, like it's really cold. So oftentimes you have to build these metal facilities with extra insulation in between, or air spacing, or things like that. It takes more materials. It's a little bit more to upkeep. What about the fiberglass aspect? Is that more insulating than typical metal is? And then does that make it easier to build because you're not having to deal with so many materials?
So I do not have a degree in thermodynamics. I can't even say that I've taken a class in it, Kaylee, but from from what I do understand is that it is a little bit more insulating, because like you said, metal is a great conductor of a like temperature, but it also is a great conductor of heat. So it's more prone to maybe some hot spots and different things like that, whereas the fiberglass alternative doesn't necessarily have that. So it really, that's where it really kind of comes down to what application are you using it for, because obviously metal can get colder, so you're not gonna have like a negative 50 degrees Celsius fiberglass unit. You're just not. But the metal part, you really can get that colder. But in some of those refrigerator applications, especially if you're in a food service situation where the door is getting open and closed all the time, that's a lot of heat that can come in, especially in that front of that walk-in, that can really warm up the space. And for some of those extremely sensitive temperature items, that's not really a valid option. That's not something that anyone wants to deal with, is that uneven temperature control throughout the space. So while I don't have a deep, rich background in thermodynamics, I do know that it's just another option that people can have, and it really depends on your business and your use case for if metal or fiberglass is the right way for you to go.
Dang, Mary, I'm really disappointed that you didn't have that very specific thermodynamics knowledge to share with me about the conduction of metal versus fiberglass. I'm going to have to go to trusty Google and look it up. Keeping on that theme, though, is something that we may be able to connect a little bit more dots on. Other applications to this, because they're doing this design, obviously, as you mentioned, for the walk-in space. Do we think that we could maybe see this taken and applicable to the actual cold chain transport space? Do we see maybe a time in the future where we start seeing fiberglass installation or fiberglass production of reefer trailers by chance?
I think there's a great use case for it. Again, my crystal ball is quite cloudy, so I'm not sure exactly of the future. But I think there is a lot of great space, great opportunity here because typically, you'll have your walk-in unit, and a trailer is more or less a walk-in on wheels. It's just a matter of being able to make it mobile and put it out on the road, which it can get a little tricky with some of the different regulations and requirements for trailers and everything like that. So I would love to see that because I think that would also help with the conductivity of temperature because obviously one of the big issues in the cold chain is in the summer, which we are in right now. Is keeping those units cold and protected in the middle of the Arizona summer because 110 degrees in Arizona driving through the middle of the desert with the sun beating down on you is a little different than driving through parts of the Midwest and other things like that where you have to factor in humidity in the Midwest versus Arizona. It's just an insane amount of heat both coming off of the road and coming down. So it's really just gonna depend on the practical applications and how they can get designed for future use. But personally, I'm here for any and all innovation and anything that's going to make the trucks lighter, more energy efficient, and be able to do their jobs better.
I agree with you on that front. Mary, thank you for joining us for this update this morning. Where and when can we find Running on Ice?
Running on Ice will come out to everyone across the world at 2:00 today Eastern, and you can watch it right here on YouTube. Or if audio is more your thing, you can get the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if that's not enough Running on Ice news for you, the newsletter does also come out at 2:00 today, and you can subscribe to that on freightwaves.com/runningonIce.
Great stuff, Mary. Have a good weekend. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.